What's going on YouTube? Aaron here, and in today's video we are going to be jumping back into the Summer Wells case. Specifically, we're going to be talking about a conversation that just happened over on the Interview Room's channel, joined by Joshua from the channel The Lab. They just got done chatting with Jose Roman. It was a 2+ hour conversation, so I will have that link down below if you want to go watch that yourself. If you've been following this case, you know that Jose recently talked on the Justice for All YouTube channel a little over a week ago, and I think some people were left with more questions than answers. Chris goes into it a little bit with Jose here of his time with the Wells, his time staying at the Wells property. And I think a lot of stuff was said that was just kind of checking that initial story from the Justice for All interview, and his story seems consistent. So I just want to start off by saying, Jose, I believe a lot of what Jose is saying. I really do. And one thing that even the Lab talks about in this live stream is that Jose has talked more about Summer Wells since Summer Wells has been missing than Don and Candace combined. I know he wasn't quoted to say that exactly, but that's kind of what he was telling Jose, is like, I commend you for speaking about Summer and actually talking about who Summer was, because even though Jose has just kind of entered the picture in terms of being online now in this case for people to dissect what he's saying, he's now talked more in depth about Summer and kind of who she is than Candace and Don. And so like I said, I give credit to Jose for that, and I really do believe a lot of what Jose is saying. So the first thing I want to mention is the lock on the basement door. Jose talks about there not being a lock on that door when he stayed at that house. He talked about the couch even on the outside of the door being there in an effort to keep the kids from going outside, but they would be able to push it forward enough to slip out the door still. And so him lying about there not being a lock, I think, is somewhat strange. And then it just points to Candace's walkthrough video with Chris from the Interview Room even more, because Candace even says,
I don't recall if this was locked or not. I don't recall that.
Okay.
And if there was no lock at all, then there's nothing to be sure about or not. There was just no lock. And so if they knew they installed that lock after the fact, which they probably did to show CPS or anyone else who maybe would have come into the house that the house was at least somewhat safe, even though the house was still a wreck, she wouldn't be able to say, oh, I don't know if it was locked, because there wouldn't have been a lock. So the lock thing is weird to me. Another thing that kind of stood out was the no Wi-Fi at the house thing. That's only weird because I know Candace had talked about the boys watching YouTube. She either said watching YouTube, playing Minecraft. There's all these different stories of what the boys were doing in the house while they were out shopping. I doubt that they were tethered to Candace's phone or a phone during that, especially because Jose also talks about Candace's phone being one of the only phones that got reception out there, and that it only had one bar. If it was lucky, she would only have one bar of service, which is also strange because Candace talked about her mom's phone being the only phone that had service, and that's why she used her mom's phone, Grandis's phone, to call 911. So there's all these weird things, and it just kind of goes back to, what were the boys doing? Were they just playing video games offline? Because they weren't watching YouTube if they had no internet connection. Jose once again confirmed that the dogs that were on the property at that time would have absolutely barked nonstop if somebody came to the property that had not been there before. He said that it took maybe 2 or 3 days for the dogs to get used to him, and that at that point, they stopped barking whenever he would come onto the property. But they asked that same question because Chris, when he went there to do his walkthrough interview, he said in his chat with Jose that the dogs for sure were viciously barking, and that actually his wife stayed in the truck during the entire time he was on the property. That, obviously when you think about the abduction theory that people have, I think the only way that is possible at that time, when those particular dogs were on the property, the only way that would be possible is if someone had already warmed up to the dog. So if it was somebody that they knew that had been to that property multiple times before, for the dogs to be used to that person. Apparently the dogs that they have at the property now are younger dogs, and they're not the exact same dogs that were at the property both when Chris was there about a little over a month after Summer went missing, as well as way back when Jose was there. Which brings me to my next point, and that is the confusion around the time frame in which Jose was actually at the Wells property. I think it's a little bit weird that Jose was not able to give even an estimate when Chris and Joshua asked him, how long were you at the Wells property? And he goes on to say, it's farm life, it's backcountry life. You don't really think about time, And I'm just thinking it's odd that he wouldn't be able to at least like give an estimate, because I know in the first interview he talked about being there for like 6 months, and I think there's just a couple things he could easily do right now that would be able to confirm how long he was there. Look back at old text. I'm sure he was texting either on Facebook Messenger or another app that would have those messages stored from when he was talking to Candace and whoever coordinating his time there, right? Go back and look at these old messages of when you first arrived at the house. Another way you could do it is look back at phones that you may have taken on your cell phone. I know he talked about getting rid of his phone after the fact, but if he has any of those old photos on another device, or like I said, old messages that are stored within apps, like you can re-download apps and sometimes still see your old messages because they're stored externally outside of the phone. So I think it's a little weird him not wanting to even give an estimate when Josh asked him of his time at the Wells. And I think that is because more was happening at the house than what he was even talking about. When Chris from the interview room asks Jose what other drugs possibly were happening that you may not have really seen happen, but you knew based on what you were seeing kind of around the house could have been happening. And Jose basically said the only thing that he saw anyone do was drink and smoke cigarettes. And I think Chris immediately was just like, I've been to that house. I saw signs of other drug use. And so I think, like I said, I think Jose's telling a lot of truth. I think that there are a couple things he's probably saying because he was in the presence of more going on. Even if he wasn't involved actively, it would look really bad if he admitted to like more destructive behavior happening around these children. Like I said, even if he wasn't involved in drug use, I just think there was more going on at that house, and him giving a bigger time frame or even a more accurate time frame of when he was there in the end could come back to bite him in some way. But I think he's kind of holding a little bit back there when it comes to the time frame. The next thing that is a little bit strange to me, and this was strange both in the Justice for All interview and then it was kind of confirmed in this one, was Jose talking about kind of his combativeness with Dawn and him actually calling Dawn out on certain things that Dawn was doing. One of the things being a shower that he had with Summer. He said that he heard the shower going or a bath or whatever it was. And he asked Candace, where's Summer? And she said, oh, she's in there taking a bath with Dawn. And I guess Jose immediately stepped in and yelled for Summer and told her to come out. And he wrapped her in a towel. To me, that is that's such an interesting thing for this stranger who really isn't at the house for very long to be kind of like stepping in. And I get everyone has their opinion on what they think about that situation. But you would think him interrupting Dawn showering or bathing with Summer and calling him out on that would lead to more of like an escalated like scenario or a fight between him and Dawn. Part of me thinks that Dawn maybe would have been under the influence during those times of escalation to where he just didn't know what to even think of it. But it sounds like those kind of confrontational moments would have led to more of a scene. I don't know. Maybe Dawn just is kind of abusive towards the women in his life. I'm not entirely sure. Another thing Jose said that I thought was interesting was that sometimes when the kids would be hungry, Candace would just say, you know what to do, go throw a pizza in the oven. And that completely supports my idea that I've always had, that Candace is not a helicopter parent by any means. And it goes back to that interview that she had on the property with Chris when she said that she walked Summer over to the house and told the boys to not, watch over Summer. I'll be right back. And it's just like, if she just told them to just go use the oven by themselves and not have any worry about that, there's no way that she was a helicopter parent by any means. And so that interview with Chris, that's where the whole story completely falls through the cracks. Yeah, there's just no way.
I literally walked over to here. Like literally walked right to here where I could see the boys and on the kitchen table.
Got him.
And I watched her walk in there. And afterwards, when she was already in there, I walked over. I said, "Quiet." And he looked at me and I said, "Watch Sissy. I'll be right back."
Also, now that I'm thinking about it more, I'm just so confused as to what the situation looked like, and I feel like I wish I was sitting there in the live with Chris and Josh here, because I would have asked Jose what the living situation looked like when, like, Allie, for instance, was staying over. He just said it was like a slumber party. And to me, I'm just wanting to ask, were they all just like sleeping on the ground? Because he talked about them all being upstairs. He was downstairs. You know, you're talking about multiple adults as well as all of the kids. There are barely enough beds in that house right now as is for everyone in the house currently. Obviously, Candace is the only one there, but if it were just to be Candace, Dawn, and the kids right now, it would be a tight fit. And so to think that there were multiple adults, I would have asked Jose, like, what did that look like? Were they just lined up in the front room on the ground? Because even the ground, there's stuff everywhere. So it just, painting that whole picture, I wish that would have been painted a little bit more of what that really looked like when Allie was over there, for example. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks again to Chris and Joshua for doing the video tonight. It was good to go back through and get to hear from Jose again. Like I said, that is linked down below if you want to watch their video. And yeah, that's kind of all I have for tonight. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.